HMS Hood was constructed as the world's largest warship in the early 20th century. Known as the Mighty Hood, this battlecruiser became a symbol of British imperial naval power. However, behind its imposing exterior lay a reality that profoundly affected the crew's daily life. Hood was referred to by its own crew as the largest submarine in the Navy. The origin and consequences of this nickname stemmed from an ironic flaw in the ship's design. In this documentary, we examine this lesser-known aspect of Hood. HMS Hood began construction in 1916, according to Admiral Fisher's battlecruiser concept. Fast, heavily armed, and relatively lightly armored. However, the loss of 3 British battlecruisers at the Battle of Jutland alarmed the Admiralty. As a result, approximately 4,000 tons of additional armor were added during construction. This modification improved the ship's protection, but significantly increased its displacement. At deep load, the draft rose by about 1.2 meters. This substantially reduced the freeboard, the height from the waterline to the main deck. Consequently, when proceeding at full speed or in heavy seas, water would wash over the quarterdeck. It entered the mess decks and living quarters through ventilation shafts. The ship's persistent dampness became a constant source of complaint among the crew. This led to the ironic nickname, the largest submarine in the Navy, a wry observation that the world's largest surface warship lived with conditions reminiscent of a submarine's wet and confined interior. Constant dampness and inadequate ventilation filled the interior spaces with mold and humidity. Official records indicate that these conditions contributed to an elevated incidence of tuberculosis cases. Tuberculosis outbreaks on Hood were attributed to the persistently damp environment and poor air circulation. The crew, thousands of sailors, served for weeks, sometimes months, under these circumstances. They lived in wet sleeping quarters and humid corridors. From the outside, Hood appeared as a prestigious symbol. Inside, however, life demanded endurance rather than comfort. This detail illustrates that the ship's legend was shaped not only by victories and power, but also by the crew's everyday hardships. While this design flaw was not directly responsible for Hood's tragic end, it had indirect consequences. The added weight strained the structure and prevented a major modernization. For 20 years, Hood underwent no comprehensive refit, leaving its deck armor relatively thin by later standards. On 24 May 1941, during the Battle of the Denmark Strait, a shell from Bismarck struck Hood's vulnerable point. The resulting magazine explosion caused the ship to sink rapidly, claiming the lives of 1,415 crew members, one of the Royal Navy's greatest single losses. The damp conditions the crew endured for years were part of a broader pattern of maintenance shortcomings. A thorough refit might have altered the outcome. HMS Hood was more than a warship. It was a symbol of British naval might. Behind the title Mighty Hood lay an ironic reality created by design decisions. The largest surface vessel was, to its crew, the largest submarine. This story reminds us that naval warfare encompasses not only technology, but also the human element. Ventis secundis, with favorable winds. Yet on its final voyage, the winds turned against Hood.